was supposed to have reviewed this album ages ago. I had this album the day before it came out, and I listened to it, and I was supposed to review it on the day, if not after. And it's been, good, I think, a few weeks since the release of this bloody thing, so all the hype around it would have faded out by now. So I've really screwed myself for being bloody lazy, but that's my fault. So, this band is a first on my channel. There's nothing up about them. No one knows my opinion on them. No one who subscribed to me may know of this. I don't know, unless they tell me. But I'll take it as they don't know, so I have to give an explanation of what this band is. So this band formed in 2013, so they're pretty new, actually. They're not an old band, they're pretty damn new. They've only made 3 albums. This is actually their third, which, as you could probably tell, released pretty recently this year. The 2 albums that came before, Forsaken and something else, their name escapes me, I haven't really listened to. I got onto this band for this album, Aequilibrium. But obviously I need to kind of know where the band's come from so I can see how things have changed, if they have at all. So I have gone in and listened to Forsaken. I haven't given it a proper listen to, so I don't have a completely accurate or good opinion about if this album's overly different. I've basically kind of skipped through the second album, and I've read a few reviews about Aequilibrium just to see what professional critics kind of say, and they kind of say that the album is kind of different. Them other albums are pretty bog standard power metal, as for this is a bit more progressive. So I got the idea from that. I listened to the first album to kind of see, is it kind of typical, is this more progressive, is it different? So I've done a bit of research there. As I say, the band started 2013, they haven't been around for too long. This is their newest album, which is only the third. Their other 2 albums were power metal, this one's progressive power metal. The band is from Italy, specifically Rome apparently, from what I've read online. And let's just kind of go through the rundown of the album. Is it similar to their old? Kinda. They haven't miraculously kind of braked away from their original sound, which you never really want to. A band, you don't want to completely just get up and just completely do something brand new and completely lose identity. You always want a band to maintain that identity that makes them them and is their signature kind of sound. You want that to always remain consistent. So they do have it. It is different. It is a little bit more, I wouldn't say progressive. I would say it's a bit more of a typical heavy metal album. There are other albums as far as power metal, because there's multitude of types of power metal. There's 2 different types. There's the power metal, which is it's all about medieval and knights, and they have their style of backing singing, and they talk about dragons and all that nonsense. And then there's a type of power metal which is unbelievably fast, bombastic, some really powerful vocalists who can really belt out in the high register. And they do some really fast, intense solos, and that is basically all they are. They are just incredibly fast and technical with their playing, and the vocals are just incredibly powerful and high, typically. And then, as I say, the other power metal, it's all about the fucking knights and crap medieval fantasy shit. Noveria isn't the fantasy style. They were the really fast, intense stuff type of power metal, which is kind of more a new era style of thing. It is a very modern power metal sound that they have, in that more kind of aggressive power metal stance. This being what people argue is progressive, as I say, just it's heavy metal / power metal. I wouldn't say progressive. I'd say how they've changed it is they still have that fast aggression to it, but they add a bit more kind of melody to it. They slow things up in certain areas. They open the sound up. They have pauses. They do melody. They use different kind of tones and things instead of just everything being this real dry aggression, which can get a bit kind of stale after a while. So this album kind of breaks things up a little bit more and just adds a bit more kind of melody, just to kind of separate things, make it a bit more fresh. But they do stick to that power metal thing, but how much is what we're going to have to get into. So let's get into the first track, which is called Waves. So it's basically starting pretty typical for Noveria. The song just kind of bursts into an eruption of kind of aggressive, fast riffs and bombastic drumming, and it's just like, well, it's not vastly different from the previous album. So, yeah. So, how was the kind of first intro? Well, as I say, you got bombastic drums, which are going quite fast. They sound very, very tight. The production quality sounds fantastic. Everything is very clear and crisp. The guitars are quite chunky and fat in sound. They're very kind of gain heavy, so very dark and aggressive sounding guitars. They're very intricate. They're quite quick. There's some really dark male choir in there, and there's some elements where the guitars will kind of slow down just to give a bit of melody to it, and then at one point the keys come in and everything kind of opens up, and it's like, this is quite melodic and has a nice kind of melody to it. I like that bit when everything kind of slows down and focuses on kind of this melody and this kind of tone and mood. But then kind of after that it kind of breaks apart and then gets into your verse. As for the rest of the song, it is pretty kind of a bog standard kind of heavy metal track, which has power metal elements to it. The verse is quite kind of typical and kind of stale and lacks any kind of uniqueness to it. The vocalist is really good, no lie about it. He's an incredible vocalist, has a great voice to it. There is a lot of kind of change in tones and kind of pitches and rhythms throughout the song. So there's a pre-chorus where he kind of changes it up. The chorus he changes. The verse each has two different styles of singing. And the same with the instruments. There's not really a key focus in the verse, which could have added a bit more of this kind of unique kind of vibe to it and tone. It's just, kind of heavy guitars, typical kind of power metal voice in this kind of power metal style. And the only thing to kind of separate things up is basically when it gets to the bridge section. The bridge section is where they start differentiating themselves away from their power metal roots. Because the bridge, things kind of slow down and the keys kind of go into a more kind of piano style. And the guitars kind of dissipate, as well as them bombastic drums. Everything just gets a little bit more lighter and kind of into this kind of dark, somber mood, with a kind of lighter go on the vocals as well. And this really helps break things up, because for the most part the song is quite bombastic. As the song is going, everything does work well, not to take away from how good the track is. The chorus, the voice is heightened to add a bit more height and weight to delivering the chorus. It's quite catchy, it's quite memorable. The instruments kind of slow things down and everything, get a bit more kind of simple and everything, just to get a bit of a kind of a breath going in. But immediately out of that, the guitars are very kind of bombastic. The pre-chorus has a nice kind of rhythm to it. There's some laid vocals, so the vocalist will sing, and then underneath that he's a bit kind of faded in the background, so there's some nice kind of laid vocals there just to add a bit more melody in that kind of area of the pre-chorus. So the song has its kind of melody, and it has its kind of separations and multitude of flows and highs and lows and catchiness, and your element of melody. as well as that intro where you have the kind of dark aggression and slow deepness of male choir vocals, and you've got the keys that add some quite nice, beautiful melody to it, even though it still remains quite dark. Just to distinguish itself, whereas for the most part the verse is pretty kind of typical, the chorus is quite typical, even though it is heightened, which adds a different element. And then the bridge, as I say, definitely changes the pace up by slowing things down. As for the solos, you have a mix of keys and guitar. The keys and guitars both do lead at the same time, so it starts guitar, then you go keys to guitar, key, and they jump back and forth a multitude of times. As far as the solo goes for both, they do both focus on being quite technically driven. There's not much kind of melody going into it, which is a bit of a shame. It is mostly just, again, just it's fast like the song, and it's aggressive like the song. There's nothing really kind of separating things. Technically it's well done, it's just it would be nice to have a bit more flavour, a bit more kind of variation, something different to separate from what we've been given from the song so far. So technically very well done, and it's great to get a multitude of solos from the guitarist and as well as the keyboardist. So in an aspect it is great, but it could have been better. After the solo is done, we get a whole new kind of element that we haven't heard, so it's good to see that it continues and doesn't go just straight back into the chorus, which is quite typical of a multitude of bands out there, so that's nice to just keep things new and fresh. And it's a bit more kind of slow again, so it's good to kind of just get that. And then it just kind of goes back into the chorus, and that's basically it. So it's not a bad track, it is fun, a little kind of typical, but it does add some new elements. So let's see how they continue into the second track, The Awakening. The Awakening is probably my favourite track off the album, mostly just because it has the best kind of melodies to it, and it distinguishes itself better than the rest of the album does, apart from the other tracks surrounding the album. So the song starting off, there is a bit of emphasis on the keys being quite kind of aggressive and dark. They're not fast or anything, it's just a huge emphasis on it, and they're trying to go for this really dark, menacing kind of sound thing. And then the guitars are quite open and everything until they start coming in with lead guitars. And then it kind of just goes down that kind of typical Noveria style of everything's just very fast and very aggressive and bombastic. And it's just typical, the keys kind of fizzle out and everything's just really fast, really fat and beefy sounds, and very technical sounding. And quick, and it's just, this is kind of typical, there's nothing too interesting. Nearer the start of the verse though, the drums start kind of slowing down, doing a bit more cymbal kind of taps and things. And then as the vocalist kind of comes in, the drummer just ends on this cymbal tap, the guitar belt out a chord and just lets it ring out as the vocalist just is left alone just with the reverb of this chord and the sound of the cymbal smack from the drummer as he just sings alone, and it just makes you have such an emphasis on the vocalist's voice, which is what I like to hear. We've had the bombastic kind of intro, I've heard it, I appreciate it, I want something new now. I don't want to just go into a verse that kind of just carries the thing on. The sound is so open, his voice sounds amazing while it's isolated, it's just slow, it's relaxing. It gives me a break, it gives me a chance to appreciate the vocals. His vocals are layered, so when he sings there is some backing vocals from him as well underneath him. So as he finishes his front vocal lines, he'll be in the kind of background, a little kind of faded. And he just adds some nice kind of elements to it, and just brings out a bit more melody. And then going into the second part of the verse, the guitars just kind of come in, just do a bit more of a kind of gallop kind of nature to them. And then the vocalist kind of starts kind of speeding up his vocal pattern to keep up with the kind of gallops and everything. Nothing's going too bombastic, like this is not, you know, an intense power metal thing. This is still quite typical just heavy metal, which I kind of like. It's just like it's progressing, and it's not just, I've had the power metal intro, I've had this really nice melody kind of first section verse, and now I've got something a bit more kind of rhythmic. And then the third part of the verse, yes, there's 3 different parts of it. The vocalist goes into a bit more of a darker kind of tone and everything, as well as the instruments, they kind of slow down, just get into a bit more of a darker kind of play, and it just gives a new kind of element to it. Then you get a pre-chorus, and then you get into your chorus. This is by far the best chorus on the album because it's so open, the backing vocals are so kind of high and everything, and it's just got such a fantastic melody to it. It's got a great highness to it, and it's just easily just the best chorus. It's just the most memorable, it's got the best melody to it, which makes it kind of stick out. If it's just this dry kind of chorus like any other, it's just not going to be memorable. If it's got this great melody to it and great emphasis on the kind of like high backing vocals, and it's got the best flow to it, it's just going to easily stand out. It's really a fantastic chorus. Going back into the verse, the play of instruments that separate chorus from second verse is basically just the bombastic nature of the intro. So back to the kind of power metal thing, it's again not anything too kind of memorable or exciting because it lacks kind of melody. But as the second verse starts, it misses that just kind of whacking out a power chord and let it kind of just ring out as the vocalist kind of takes its front and centre piece. It starts with the second part of the verse of the first verse. So it's just got this kind of rhythm to it, and then it goes into its darker nature, then it goes into its pre-chorus chorus. As far as the solo, it tries for going a bit more kind of melodic nature than what the previous track Waves did. Waves was more kind of just all trying to show technicality and power and aggression. This one starts off melody and like it's trying to do something a bit more kind of catchy, melodic, a bit more kind of saws or something, but it quickly kind of just gets into just kind of going technical. It seems to kind of want to be a bit more melody driven, but it seems to just have a lot of weight, so the members just are tied down to just being aggressive, which harms the solo, because it's like every time they try and get towards melody, it always has this weight of you have to always remain technical at the same time, which loses the kind of just the nature of it just being a melodic solo. You just lose it because they're constantly tied down to it just being technical. Going back into the chorus though, they take some of the instruments out of the chorus, so they kind of build the chorus up into sections, which I kind of like doing that, and then eventually the chorus comes back into its whole nature. You actually get a solo after the chorus to kind of finish the song up, and this is definitely the better solo than the dueling between key and guitar. This is just kind of guitar, and it's going a lot more for the saws. It works a lot better because he kind of shuts out the technical side and just focuses a bit more on kind of melody, tone, and soaring natures. So it's got this great flow to it because of the soaring nature to it. It's a lot more memorable and distinguished because it separates from all the kind of aggression that Noveria kind of throw at you constantly. So it's just a way better thought out, emotionally driven solo. With just a lot more beauty and weight behind it because of the kind of flowing and soaring nature of it. So yeah, a song with a lot of kind of pieces to it, a lot of kind of structure, some great melody, fantastic chorus. I really like that first verse because everything breaks apart and it kind of just builds up. So I have the focus on the singer, then I've got something a bit more rhythmic, some darker tones, and a heightened chorus. So I get all these different pieces which I can focus on instead of Waves, which is just like it's kind of just aggressive. There are distinguished elements within Waves, but they are so few and far between. As for the Awakening, everything is put into these nicely digestible sectors, and it makes it work a lot well, and it makes you be able to focus on each individual piece, and it keeps the song flowing very nicely and fluidly, apart from in Waves just being this kind of chunk of a thing and not really separating itself very well. So the next track is going to be Newborn. So this is track 3, Newborn, and already with track 3, listening to it as a whole, you start to kind of feel a sense of monotony, and it starts to kind of strain on you kind of listening through this, and you try and wonder why. As I say, Waves and the track Awakening both did kind of sound different. I prefer the Awakening over in Waves. They're not carbon copies of each other. And as far as Newborn goes, that is again also the same style of thing. The intro is actually quite a soft and pleasant start. As for Waves and the Awakening starts quite aggressively, Newborn starts quite soft and a very kind of clean and warm tone from the guitar. It doesn't take too long for the kind of bombastic rhythmic nature of the guitar to come in with that kind of heavy gain and stuff, and sounding a little kind of fast and kind of technical, which again puts a bit of a strain on, because we've had intros that have the exact same tone and exact same approach to them. So even though the small element at the start is different, a chunk of the intro is still carbon copies of tracks before it. As far as the verse goes, it is again kind of a carbon copy. It's not like the Awakening at all, but it's just the fact that tone-wise it's the same, key-wise it's the same. There's nothing new, kind of symphonic or kind of catchy nature, or no kind of change in tempos at all. It is basically a mid-tempo, well, not mid-tempo, it's got a bit of a kind of quick pace to it, and some technical riffs going on. And then vocally, the guy kind of sounds kind of as per usual. He's not got a vast range to him. He has a great voice, don't get me wrong, but things seem to change on this album, so you can't really say, oh, it's just the same thing over and over and over again. The album is diverse, but kind of the core elements of everything, it is kind of always the same. All the intros have been different, but yet somewhere within itself, it has the exact same style of thing. All the verses can be different, but yet have elements of the exact same thing again. The chorus goes for it being more kind of open, it opens itself up, and it's nothing really special. It opens itself up and it tries to go musical with more heightened elements on the kind of keys to kind of give it this more of a kind of this uplifting melody kind of feel to it. But the problem is, it doesn't really go there, so you're kind of trapped in between these two voids of they're trying to go with something a bit more kind of melodically natured beside aggression, but it's got aggression and it's got melody, but it's not really a really beautiful chorus, and it's not something really aggressive either and fast and bombastic, but it's not something that's beautiful either. Leaving it as just this kind of thing, which is like, it's got melody, but it's not really melodic, and it's kind of aggressive, but it's not aggressive. And people can say you can have best of both worlds, but it's like, it's not the best of either world though. It's a poor attempt of melodic and it's a poor attempt of heavy. The best part of the song is basically when the second verse comes in, because this is where things change for the better. This verse is melodic, which is different to the previous two tracks, because it goes to how the intro kind of started off for them few seconds. You get clean guitar, there's some nice sounding keys, the voice is melodic, and it's like, this is quite refreshing. This is a nice change of pace. I'm appreciative of this. I want to see where this goes. But again, they don't really dwell on it for that long. They pull it back to typical Noveria sound, which is going back to this bombastic, fast-paced nature, and it just kind of destroys this new take and new elements that the album has, this diversity. They don't really dwell on being diverse overly long. They want the Noveria repetition to always be there. And it's the same thing with the solo. The solo, again, is kind of going for something a bit more melodically based, and it does. It's not a perfect melodic solo. I think the guys need kind of a bit more work in this kind of field, because it's not a field that they're really, being keen and thrust into heavily, so they still need a bit of time to kind of understand a melodical kind of approach to a solo, because all they've been doing is aggression, so they're not used to it, and you can tell. But the problem is, again, kind of like how the overall album, it tries for something different, but it's always never breaking away from this core thing that always runs through. There is shred in this, there is technical stuff in this, and speed and aggression, and it's just like, I don't mind this, and I don't mind the melodic stuff, but it's just the album always has this aggression. You can never fully break away from it. It is always there, and it gets quite tiresome, this element, because it plays throughout. It starts to kind of strain on you, and it gets repetitive, and the new stuff they bring in isn't enough to really break the monotony apart and to give you something new. It's just like, there's a new element to it, but it's not really new because the old element remains. And after the solo, you get some kind of piano stuff, and it's like, this is quite nice, but then it immediately just kind of just kills that. It doesn't go anywhere with it. It just goes straight back into the typical chorus, which is quite bland of being anything really unique one way or the other. It just walks in the middle, and it is not really good at either way, either side. Let's get into the next track, which is going to be called Blind. Yet again, with the song Blind, we're basically just kind of getting the exact same thing, but with only these little nuances of something different. And when it is an album of 11 tracks of all the same, that every track has this little new element about it, it doesn't really sound like that's going to really be enough to really give you an overall great experience of new elements, of evolving things, surprising structures, and surprising things that just kind of come out of nowhere to just surprise you. It's just everything becomes a little predictable, and you start kind of just hearing the same thing again. So as Blind starts out, it starts with some subtle kind of digital kind of sounds, which again is kind of new, but then immediately just gets into these really kind of dark, chuggy, broody kind of riffs, which ain't new for this album or band. The album is overall a very dark and moody kind of album, with some pretty aggressive riffs. Sometimes the riffs will be more simple than others, but it's either going to be some really dark, moody, aggressive chord riffs, or it's dark, moody, aggressive, technical riffs. It's one of the two, and that's basically it. You don't really get a lead, you don't really get much of anything else. So getting into the chorus, there is again a nuanced thing. This gives this chorus something different than the others, which is technically the keyboards, which are kind of in the background, just giving this kind of heightened kind of effect, that just kind of breaks through all of this kind of muddy kind of sound of the guitars and drums. So it's just this kind of like one key press and everything that just has this very kind of light kind of tone that just kind of pierces through everything. And it just adds this nice kind of effect. It gives a bit of kind of weight to the song instead of it just being like cut and dry, just kind of like guitar riffs and vocals and drums. So it kind of helps, but because it's just this one kind of key press that kind of lingers and then again until the chorus comes to an end, and other than that it's just the typical kind of guitars and drums and vocals. It's like cool, I guess, but nothing really to wow me at all. As far as the chorus goes, things open up again, but it's not really going for heavy at all, and it's not really going for musical at all. It's a pretty bland chorus, to be honest, and vocally at times it comes across as a little whiny, unfortunately. The verse is kind of the exact same thing, chorus, it goes to near enough the exact same thing. As far as the solo, it's pretty much the exact same thing. Starts off with melody, something a little kind of catchy, decent kind of play through, and then it kind of builds into some technical stuff. It'll go into the keys, that kind of carries on the technical kind of aspects, and then they kind of just interweave between being technical and being melodic, but never really fully try and go out with something fully kind of aggressive and technical, and there's no real solo that has a focus on just being melodic and something kind of beautiful. There's no kind of unique tones being shoved in, no kind of unique ideas. It's just, let's just kind of come in, do some hold kind of here, and then we'll just do a technical kind of run, and that is usually just how they take their solos. We'll come in, we'll do some kind of holds and things and something a bit kind of beautiful, and then we'll just do some technical stuff, and that is it. They approach every solo the exact same way, kind of guitar and keys. And then he just kind of goes back into that kind of blandish chorus, and that is the song. It's pretty straightforward, nothing really special about it apart from that kind of key tone that is persistent through the verse. Other than that, there's just nothing to distinguish this song out of the others, nothing unique to make this special outside of the others, as said, so pretty bland. So let's just get into the next one, which is going to be The Nightmare. The Nightmare is kind of different, definitely from the album, because it actually starts soft and the verse is soft until it kind of reaches the chorus. So that is pretty different. But I'm still gonna complain anyway. I know, I'm sorry, I asked for something different, they do it, and I'm not happy about it. But look, you're going to appreciate the change of pace. You're going to appreciate hearing something new. What you're not going to appreciate is it's just not well done. Which, in fairness, is completely fair. I personally don't think it's well done. Now, it's trying to go for something kind of creepy, but it doesn't really achieve it. It's trying to be slower, but it's not really that exciting. And then when the chorus comes in and it's kind of mixing the verse, which is supposedly creepy and slow, with a chorus that is some kind of going for something melodic that is supposed to be beautiful or something, and then it's mixed in with something very heavy and aggressive, the song just seems really bloody confused and a bit of a mess and all over the place. You've got a verse which is creepy and moody, then a chorus which is all bright and pretty as something, I think they're trying to go for. And then other parts of the song which is the typical Noveria regression. It's just like, what the hell's going on here? And they don't really do well in any area. No area it's like, oh, this is a really great aggressive part, or this is a really pleasant chorus, or this is a really kind of creepy, eerie verse. It's just like, none of them work. The verse, there's a line of, it's easy queasy. I think he says, which is incredibly cheesy. It's easy queasy, or something else, but whatever he's saying, I think it's cringy. It's easy creepy. It's easy creepy maybe, but still, Christ. How is it going for creepy and everything when he's saying it's easy queasy, or it's easy creepy, or it's eerie creepy? It's just kind of, it's a little cringeworthy. And the guitar riff that's in the background of this verse, it's not really doing anything special. It's just a tone which they've kind of gone with, yeah, this is a creepy ass tone, and just playing whatever basic. It's not really anything at all special. It's not something you kind of listen to and like, God, I'd really like to listen to this verse without the lyrics because it really kind of stands out. It's pretty boring. There's nothing special to it. The chorus again, the sound kind of opens up and the voice is like, every night it calls out to you. And I think it's still supposed to be this creepy thing, but it sounds more kind of beautiful to me. Like someone calling out for their lover, but I think it's something creepy is calling out to kill them or something, and I'm getting the completely wrong impression because of the sound and tone that this chorus is shifted into. So it doesn't really work. Vocally he sounds nice here, but other than that, nothing really special going on. As per usual, the verse kind of the same. After this area it kind of goes into the typical heavy Noveria. It's just like, well, I've heard this, so I'm fed up with this part. And as for the solo, so the song is kind of giving you something kind of creepy and slow and everything, so what are they going to do with the solo? The keyboard comes in and goes very technical, and it's just like you have a tone and you have a speed to this. So you've got this slower tempo and you've got this tone that you've now put in to try and be something kind of creepy. Are you going to play into this? No, because that would obviously be really, really stupid. I'm being sarcastic here. If you've got something different and unique, play into it to show a whole different side to all the different elements that makes the band. Not just the verse, and then the solo will just completely just do typical. It's just like, play to your new stuff, play into all these new ideas, so a whole song can be something new and unique. But no, the keys come in, it's just technical shit. Solo comes in from the guitar, technical shit, and it's a little short and it's very bland. So that's the nightmare. It's a mess. It's not really good at anything it's trying to achieve. I think it's trying to achieve creepy, I don't know. The heavy elements is quite dull, the verse is quite dull, the chorus is quite dull, and the solo is typical of every bloody solo they've attempted. So it's my least favourite track, I think. It's pretty shit. But this will be it for part 1. Join me at a later date for part 2 of this album review. Until then, I'll see you in part 2. Bye.